like continue to try new things and everything, but don't stop moving, even if you don't know what you're doing. Just keep trying things, you know, because I think, oh my gosh, because there's so many tortured artists that we know that are just always get overwhelmed by ideas or the lack of ideas and just stop. I knew I was gonna have to relocate at some point, so I kind of thought, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it now. Like, might as well, you know, while I'm the poorest I've ever been, let's just move somewhere more expensive and figure it out. So I within like 2 months I just reached out to some people I sort of knew and was like, I mean, I know a lot of people out there, but there wasn't really a lot of housing, or I couldn't really figure out how to do that in a place I could afford. So just a mutual friend hooked me up with some people who needed a third roommate and moved in really quick. And so now it's kind of just been, I've been bouncing back and forth between Phoenix and LA for a while. So since I moved in August, it's only been a couple months.
Okay.
Which when I first moved, I caught COVID from my new roommates. And then I was in my apartment for 4 weeks. And then once I got my negative test, I came back to Arizona for some jobs, went back to LA, did some jobs, came back to Arizona for some jobs. So I've been like back and forth. But
how was having coronavirus? Like, what? I assume
so
it was
it was so cute. I loved it.
I assume it was like a mild case.
Well,
maybe not.
It was, the first week was like severe, like almost went to the hospital. It was running like 102-degree fever. Like, it was pretty bad at the beginning. And I had every symptom except for nausea. So okay. It started with like body aches, and then I got my fever, and then I had a headache, and then I got congested, and then I had a sore throat, and like everything started happening within like hours. Like 1 hour would be this symptom, then the next one piled on. Like, I was literally the one day I started really getting sick, I clocked it and took videos and was like, I thought maybe because my roommate had just gotten her positive result, and it was like day 2 of me living there. I just moved in, and so part of me is just, I never believed myself. So I thought I was like lying to myself. I was like, if I'm truly paranoid enough to convince myself I have COVID and I've given myself these symptoms, because I feel like I've done that before where I give myself symptoms because I'm so panicked about something. And so I really was like, I'm impressed with my mental health if I'm able to give myself COVID symptoms. And then my test result came back positive, and I was like, okay, partially relieved that I'm not insane, and partially, you know, now worried. But once I was past that first week, it was just like cold flu symptoms, very like,
Did you lose like the taste and smell?
That
thing?
didn't happen. I lost my sense of smell after I had COVID. So I had like 3 weeks after I got my negative test that I couldn't smell anything. It was really bizarre. And I still have some symptoms. Like, I'm still a little congested, and it's been that way for the past 2 months.
Okay.
So, and everything I read online is just like, yeah, that can happen, or it cannot happen. Like, nobody really knows, you know? So I keep getting tested. I've been tested a ton of times since then, just to be sure.
Yeah, and you said you just came back negative.
Yeah, I just got another test 2 days ago, and I came back negative again, just because, you know, I'm going back and forth from Arizona and California so much, and I do, thankfully, with my job, with photography, it's like I have one of those few creative jobs where I can do it safely for people usually. Like, I can stay 6 feet from them, wear a mask the whole time. Like, a lot of work you can't necessarily do that. So anyway, just because I am going to be around clients, I'm just getting tested.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I feel like artists have been really lucky and unlucky during this whole thing, because there's some things you can extremely do remotely, like editing and this and that, but then there's also like a lower demand because people have less disposable income.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of a toss-up. But yeah, if you're a photographer and you have like a long lens, you can be like, okay, stand over there.
Yeah. And if I do need to do something portraity, it's like, if I got tested and I'm wearing my mask, most people are fairly, you know, and if they're always just, you know, usually one-on-one or small groups of people. So been lucky in that sense. I have had some weddings that people followed no COVID guidelines.
Oh wow, so you're still really doing weddings.
Still doing weddings. So I had like 3 or 4 weddings get moved or rescheduled, and then I had a couple weddings that they just transformed into like elopement ceremonies, and then I had 2 weddings where they didn't change anything and they just went ahead as planned. One was in July, which to me was like
when people were the most
frazzled
and afraid.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I thought there were going to be COVID precautions. There was like hand sanitizer and stuff, but people like had their masks on for the ceremony, and then once the reception started and they were dancing and drinking, it was like whatever, you know. And I mean, my mask was like glued to my face. I was like, absolutely not.
That's what's strange about all the people eating inside the restaurants. Like, you have to wear a mask like walking in because, you know, everybody's like doing what they're supposed to do, but then once you have your food to like get it to your mouth, everybody's just back off. So it's kind of like there's these symbolic precautions almost.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I do think like being far enough away, like, okay, that helps, you know, but it's hard because you want things to feel semi-normal. It's been so long, and I blame some people, sure, but I mostly blame our government for the fact that it's gone on for so long, and that people are just having to reopen because what else are they going to do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate of an economic stimulus and just having like monthly relief, you know, like I think there should, you know, people should have like universal income regardless, month to month, but especially in a time of pandemic, like Canada and Finland both were giving their people like $2,000 a month. I don't know if they still are, but you know, like the one-time 1,200 thing, it's like it's only natural that people are gonna have to start like living their lives again, or else things are...
It's like we're gonna die more because we can't afford to live right now, so we're gonna go out into the workplace. And it's not even that, but there's been barely any economic stimulus for small businesses or for big business, whatever it is. Like there's been bailouts for huge businesses, obviously, but it's like businesses don't know they have to reopen even if against their own good conscience, just because otherwise they close and all of their employees lose their livelihood, and it's just such a rock and a hard place. So I like support people going and eating out on patios, but also I don't know how often. I've done it a few times, but it's like, you know.
I was really nervous about even just like drive-throughs like back in like April and May, and then more and more they seem to think that like it doesn't really transfer through surfaces as much, or like it'll die on a surface much more quickly. That's what's been weird about this whole thing, because earlier like you were talking about the symptoms and how it's like kind of unclear what's even supposed to happen. Like on top of the virus having like all these different ranging symptoms and stories that we've heard from, just the information we're getting from the government has been so, I mean, not even inconsistent, but the sources have been inconsistent.
Yeah, well, and if it depends on what kind of media you're listening to, and of course our president wants to invalidate any actual facts or science that's coming through anyway, so depending on what echo chamber you live in, you're going to have one source of information and then have another. So
there's this YouTube news organization called The Hill that I really like. They have this show called Rising, where the two co-hosts, one is a Democrat and one's a Republican.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about this, I think.
Oh, have we? Yeah.
Or maybe I was talking about somebody else, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah, she used to be on MSNBC, and then he used to be a White House correspondent. And they're just very, like, neutral and objective, because, like, they'll be as hard on Trump as anybody, but then also, like, if there's some Bill Clinton Epstein stuff, that they'll talk about it and kind of, like, point out when other news people don't. So I've really liked them. And even with, like, mainstream stuff, it's like, if I watch a bunch of CNN, like, I'll see what Tucker Carlson is saying, just to be like, what do people believe, you know? Because it's like, whether or not I agree with what I'm hearing, I find that it's good to at least know what opinions other people have.
Go outside of your I have people, like, I have some not crazy, I have some very, very leftist people and some very, very right people on, like, my Facebook, which I barely go on, but I keep them in my friend group, even though they drive me absolutely insane, mostly the conservative people, just because I want to see, like, if I delete them, if I do the, you know, if you believe this and unfriend me, I don't want to be around. Like, I understand that, because if you don't believe in certain, like, basic rights, I'm never going to agree with you on most things, but I still want to know what's going on, instead of feeling like, especially, I just got so bamboozled after the 2016 election that I was like, oh, I really need to make sure that I don't think, oh, for sure it's going to go this way, just because the people I surround myself with believe the same thing, and I'm not aware of, like, people who genuinely aren't understanding some things or have different opinions. Like, I need to be more aware. I know that's a very common topic. I feel like everyone's been talking about recently, but
yeah, no, I mean, yes and no. Like, a lot of times when I wind up talking about stuff on this podcast, sometimes I can get in my head and be like, is this a waste of time saying this, because I hear it so much? But ironically, like you were just saying, we are in reality bubbles, so maybe I only think that other people have heard or thought things.
Because I've been talking about it with other people.
And then I'm like, well, I don't know if it's been, like, recorded and distributed.
That's true.
You know
That's
what I mean?
true,
But yeah, no, like, I agree with you, because I find it, like, really unproductive to cut people out of your life just based off of, like beliefs. I mean, obviously there's going to be exceptions and a line for everyone, but like a lot of the time it's like if you're trying to like make the world a better place or maybe align more with like what you think is right and wrong, it's like the only way you're going to do that is by having like a calm discussion with somebody, you know?
Yeah.
Because trying to prove people wrong into believing what you believe usually doesn't work. It's more like you have to present an argument in a way that is understandable to them and they haven't considered before.
Right. Which is hard because I've been aware of that before and tried to like make sure that the conversations I'm having with family or other people who maybe don't agree with me, you want to approach it a certain way so that what you're saying actually gets through to them instead of immediately being aggressive right off. But then sometimes it's something where it feels so personal. And I imagine for other people too, like I'm a woman and I'm queer, so I have that. But other people who have other things going on, it's like, for them to have to, for other people to say, well, you need to talk to them in a calm manner and you need to approach them in a different way. I'm like, it's so severely personal for them when they find out that somebody doesn't agree on the basis of like just their existence. It's like, you know what? No, it's not even at that point, it's like, be aggressive, unfriend people, whatever, but it's a tough line to ride.
Yeah, no, I mean, nobody's obligated to do anything.
Right.
So if you're not like capable of handling that sort of a thing, that's totally fine. I think it becomes more of a issue once people are just kind of like just yelling at each other, because then you are choosing to engage, but you're doing it in a way where if anything, they might come out of it like agreeing with you less than they started because they think, see, this person's hysterical.
Like, it confirms my beliefs. Yeah, but
There's this
they're
guy
less human.
Yeah, there's this guy named Daryl Davis, and he's like this older black man who's like converted over 200 people out of the KKK just through like.
Oh yeah, I've seen this too. I don't remember where I saw that.
Yeah, and it's like obviously not everybody's gonna have the strength or patience to do something like that. Like it would be ridiculous to be like, yeah, black people go do that. Like that's not really realistic. But the fact that somebody out there has done something like that does show, I think, at least like some hope in like the human condition and that people are more capable of change than we think. And something he even said is like there's like a lot of monsters out there that he would never in a million years have luck with, and they're just gone. So he even acknowledges like not everybody's changeable, but more people than we think are. Well,
because so much of it is circumstantial. Like I think some people, like I think I had pretty liberal parents growing up, which was lucky for me because then when I did grow up and start forming my own opinions, a lot of them did align. But I have some opinions that are actually far off from them too. But it does feel like a default thing. Like some people, just the environment you grew up in, like if someone grew up in the Deep South and they had family related to the KK, whatever it is, like until they get some experience or perspective from another person not in that realm, how can you expect them to be any other way?
Exactly. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt just because usually things in the world kind of add up. So even if there's something that's like despicable or really disagreeable, you can probably at least like trace the breadcrumbs of how it got that way. So like you just said, if there's some like deeply racist person, it's like, well, who raised them? Where are they from? Who are they friends with? Where are they getting their information from? What do they have exposure to? It's like you can kind of like maybe not excuse it, but explain it, you know, and then through that, at least you can like think about things through the lens of like, how is this possible rather than like, this is a person and this is how this happened. Yeah. I think the last election, like so many people were just left thinking this is impossible. How did this happen?
It feels, it felt very lost.
There must be a lot of evil out there. And it's like in some cases, but then in other cases, there were just people who thought like, oh, my job's going to go away and this charismatic billionaire told me he was going to bring it back. And, and then they're like, okay, I'm settled. And that was it.
Right. But it's crazy to see that he hasn't really created that many jobs.
No, everything he said was a lie.
And so many people
still are riding that high.
It was, I thought that period of time was insane. And now we're here and I'm like, oh, people are so afraid of admitting that they're wrong that they will die for that belief. Like it's crazy how committed people are to this thing that they don't really know anything about, but they voted for him, so they need to make sure they stay true to that
with a lot of conviction.
So much conviction. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've certainly been stubborn about things in my life, but that, like, I don't know. It's just it's really intense when you meet someone who's so diehard. Or
you see things like the Lincoln Project where there's like all these organizations of like
Project,
Republicans against Trump or whatever it is. But then like when you see the people who are still die hard and like their life is most likely like not in any way better than it was before.
Yeah.
But maybe just in their head symbolically it is. It's like, come on, man. Like,
well, it was already so polarized, and people were being attacked for their belief at that time. So it's like you had to stay true to the people. Just really felt like they had to stay true to that because they were already being attacked so much then that now it's like, I mean, it's so far gone.
Yeah, and I'm really encouraged that the social dilemma like wound up on trending, and more people are like aware of like how like data and media manipulation kind of forces people further and further into fringe ideological bubbles, and this is why we're all arguing with each other so much. The documentary I wish people saw more was The Great Hack from last year.
Oh, okay.
Because that was specifically about how this British company, Cambridge Analytica, which was also like co-founded by Steve Bannon, like they literally experimented with a third world country's election to see if they could then target. Okay. And their two mission goals were elect Trump and cause Brexit, and they claim like accountability, like in almost a bragging way that they created both those things. And they created thousands of fake Blue Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter protests, event pages, this and that, and how like some of these events that people went to weren't even made by actual activists,
right?
You know, or protesters.
It was just like a guinea pig situation, like they were just trying to.
And they kind of uncover how like Russia has been making fake accounts since 2013. Yeah. So like there is like this real danger in terms of just like reading fragments of opinions and, you know, because like we're talking about these people who are so like still deep in the trenches of this ideology that just doesn't really make sense at all in any way anymore. It's like how can you claim your life is better? But it's like if all they're seeing is like QAnon stuff.
Dude, the QAnon stuff is wild, and I know that some of that is so completely made up. Yeah. That and these other people are so stuck in these echo chambers of social media that they just believe, I just had so many, you know, I won't say friends anymore, but acquaintances, people that I knew that were showing up to the Save the Children protests, posting their pictures, and were so angry. Well, if you're going to the Black Lives Matter protest, why aren't you showing up to this, you know, Save the Children protest?
Is that like a pro-life thing?
So Save the Children was QAnon sex trafficking. Oh. Like it was a whole what do you call it? Like a theory,
conspiracy theory about how the Democrats are cannibalist pedophiles.
It was related to that, but people didn't even know, like some people that I knew from high school or whatever that were showing up to these protests didn't really know why they were there. They just heard Save the Children and thought they went thinking it was related to something real, which there is sex trafficking issues, there's all of that, but also like we could save the children who are being separated from their parents at the border. Or like there's other children to save too, but they didn't even know what the real reason attached to those protests were, and it was completely made up. Yeah, it's just great. The QAnon stuff is wild.
Conspiracy theorists, ultra conservatives, and I don't know, I'll think of another, but they're all very good at branding in a way that I feel like Democrats really aren't. Like most Democratic politicians are not making things that are like catchy and you can get behind, you know, like I was joking on the last podcast that like Cory Booker should have had Cory in the House.
I listened to that episode. But it's so true though. And you were talking about Yang and how he really embraced, and I think what's funny is there's some of Biden and Kamala are kind of doing that now. Like we're so close. I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point, but there was a bit of that for a little bit where they were kind of embracing certain things.
They were trying, but like with Kamala, like it always came off really forced. Like she was saying like, yeah, I used to listen to Tupac in high school, but then people found out that Tupac didn't have an album out when she was in high school. it was just a bold-faced lie.
Oh man. I feel like, but there was like kind of, restructuring of certain things where it was not necessarily like they were fully taking part, but like whoever was helping them with their campaign was creating these like memes or like they, you know, after the VP debate, they sold fly swatters and made like a ton of money. Like,
well, Joe started leaning into the whole "here's the deal" thing, and that's what he named his short-lived podcast. And like I think there was some like leaked email that said that like a Biden staffer was trying to be like, can we put him in a Fortnite hologram? Like, but that's the thing. Like when people like smell like disingenuineness, and like I didn't say that right.
That's okay.
But like when people can tell that something's like really contrived, they don't enjoy it. Like I think the reason like Andrew and Bernie like work so well on like a brand level is because it's just extremely authentic. Like Bernie just kind of rode the natural grassroots that he got that kind of harkened back to like when he was younger and people really connected with. And Yang was just kind of this futurist guy where people were like, let's just meme the shit out of this dude. And he was like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think Joe and Kamala are like down, even if they're not necessarily partaking. But yeah. But yeah.
No,
anyway.
I hope they win. Like you said, like the election's like next week. So I think whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
I don't think this last debate changed anything. I think it's all,
I watched most of it. Because of like them being extremely decentivized from like interrupting each other, it was a lot more productive than the first one. But even still, it was still like enormously frustrating.
Yeah, that was the only one I didn't. I sat down and watched the first and the VP debate all the way through, and the third one I didn't watch all the way through because I was just like, I had already voted by that point anyway, and I was just I don't need.
I watched like all of the Democratic debates, and then once it got down to the final like Bernie Biden ones, I thought it was kind of done, so I didn't like watch that last one or so. And now with all this stuff, like even more so, I'm just kind of like, let's let this happen because I remember in 2016 watching like all three of the Hillary ones because like. At that time, I remember like all the Democrats thought like, well, it shouldn't have gone this far, but as soon as America sees her looking smarter than him on stage, people will make the clear decision. And like, how ignorant of us to think like just because you see a quote unquote smarter person talking, people go with that person.
Exactly,
you know, it's like you need to prove like I have the ideas that are gonna make you who is listening to me like better off.
Right. Yeah. Like I did the last episode that you put out, you guys talked about the VP debate a little bit, and I remember her saying that she didn't feel totally like, at that point it had become so memeified that it's like whatever points they're making didn't even matter. And I guess I agree, but those are kind of for the people who didn't end up watching, like those who did watch, like there was a lot in there that really made my blood boil. I guess it didn't really change too many of my opinions, but I did become a lot more clear about who Kamala is as a person and who Pence was as a person. Yeah. And so if you actually watch them, there are like, things in there, but she's right in the sense that like, depending on what sources you're looking at after the debates, you're only going to get fed certain things. You're not going to get fed like sound bites that have really, filled with information there.
I think what my last guest was talking about is how like people, especially young people, can be so politically uninterested. Even the ones who claim that they're interested to the point that they don't participate in things like even like watching a debate to where like one can happen, and then if you're somebody who's trying to get caught up, you go on the internet, you don't really see any like substance. You just see like the salaciousness, whether or not it's a fly on his face or some crazy thing that like Trump said, so like that's been their strategy, is just like create headlines.
Totally. Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. You and I created that documentary like when we were in school.
Yeah, we did. It was in 2016 or was it 2017?
You and I, so Trump got elected, and then you and I were in a documentary class. Yeah. And we, I think the very first scene is like a day or so after the inauguration, and it was based on what people's relationships are like now after the fact, and specifically relationships between people who voted differently. Mm-hmm. And I remember our whole focus was just like,
it was not supposed to be swung one way or the other. It was just, we wanted to evaluate what those relationships were like.
Yeah, and like specifically like what happens to people who feel like they did each other dirty. I guess. I wish I could have said that more elegantly.
That's how we phrased it in the documentary.
Yeah, you guys really
dirty. Did each other dirty. Can you talk about that?
This time, see, like last time it was like really sensitive feeling because it was a bunch of like shock in terms of stuff that
was very soon after the election that we talked to people. I do wish we had we even talked about like, what if we did some follow-ups?
Yeah.
Because the documentary together, like I like what we came up with for sure, or not what we came up with, but what happened and what we recorded and put together. But it did feel like maybe, because we were on a schedule, it was class too. But maybe if we had done it at a different time, like I kind of wonder if like 2 years into the presidency, if we had done it, and like maybe even now, like kind of done these extra like episodes almost like attached to it, just to evaluate, because it was so raw at that moment.
Well, it's just interesting because like what we were just talking about just like online ideologically warfare and people not like willing to listen to each other. It feels like, if anything, things are more intense than it was before, because back then when we made that, there was a lot of people in that documentary who were like willing to be like forgiving towards each other and be like, well, I was exhausted from the campaign season, even though what happened I didn't want. Now that it's over, I'm just ready to go back to like having my relationship with so-and-so.
Right.
Now, like you were saying, because now that we've like been dragged through years of all this nonsense, and people, like you were saying, feel really, really personally
and things
attacked.
have changed. Some people feel like, well, he didn't even do the things you were afraid he did, he didn't even do the things you were afraid he was going to do. He did do them, but some people are so privileged they didn't feel any of those repercussions. Or, you know, I'm not trying to say like you're still privileged. I'm not trying to be downing on people who are privileged or anything. I'm just saying like some people think those things didn't happen, or think that his presidency didn't affect livelihoods of other people because it didn't affect them.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah. So I think a lot of that changes. It becomes so personal, and it changes. You know, politics isn't actually detached from human feelings. People always think of, I don't want to be attached to politics, because they think of it as like an inhuman, like cold thing, and they don't want to be attached to it. I'm like, that's just not what it is supposed to be. It got a negative connotation over years and years, but in reality, it's like you have to be, or you should be aware, because it's going to, if you're, I could go on a whole thing about, if you're so privileged that politics doesn't affect you, it's like you need to be paying more attention, because other people have to be involved, because it's going to affect them directly. But you're right. Sorry, that was a tangent off of what you were saying about.
No, you're good.
How it would be different if we interviewed people now.
Yeah, I'm just interested what relationships will be like moving forward, no matter who wins, because like I think a post-presidency Trump is going to be like a Twitter cult leader, you know. So it's like.
That's true. Oh,
and even with Biden and stuff, like there's so many like liberal people who like hate each other. Like, you didn't vote for my guy, or you didn't vote for my, you know. So like people even within formally like insulated groups are like pointing fingers at each other. So I think right now it's just kind of like we were saying before, it's getting harder and harder for people to like reconcile with each other. So that's why like last time, even though like the worst imaginable thing for a lot of people happened, even once it happened, people took a deep breath, because they were like, well, at least all this campaign is done and I can just go back to like my life, quote unquote.
Also, like let's see what actually happens. And
now we know what happens, and people are just, I feel like, gonna be really
and I have personally known more people who have physically cut people out of their life. Like at the time I was kind of anticipating, whoa, people are about to be broken up over this. And it did become like a let's take a deep breath, let's see what happens kind of thing. And now I have several friends who no longer speak to certain family members, or have broken up, or whatever the thing is. It's like, oh, it took a toll these past few years, and especially 2020. Well,
yeah, I mean, people have been just stuck inside going stir crazy, you know, so it's like, it's funny.
Stuck guys going stir crazy, and also stuck inside actually looking and evaluating their life, you know, and like getting close and personal with certain things.
I mean, we've all been inside, and like the very beginning of the pandemic, it seemed like a little bit like, okay, maybe the things we argue about will simmer down a little bit, and we'll get closer to like what really matters in life. But then the pendulum started to go the other way, because the longer and longer we've been inside, the more people are just antsy and frustrated, and just
and police started killing more black people on camera, and that happens.
Ever since like the murder of George Floyd, like, and there's been so much political activism and protesting and whatever, and like all that stuff then becomes politicized. Like, but both police.
It's so terrible that politicized even exists as a term, because it's like politics are human discussions. Like that's what it is. You know, it's what it, at least in my mind, what it should be. But
it I just hope that people are like doing their best, and you know, if you're active with something, it's because you're trying to push for a better world and stuff. That I don't know what I'm saying, really.
No, I mean, I have such a hang up with how the word politics has been connotated now. I'm like, it sucks, because it's like an excuse for people to not pay attention now, or not necessarily pay attention, but to label something a certain way. But anyway, 2020 I think just changed a lot of things that if we were to do, it'd be cool to, you know, I just don't know how possible doing some other sort of documentary based. It's almost feels scary. At the time, it felt really scary to ask people, can we interview you and your boyfriend? Can we interview you and your mom about the fact that your mom voted Trump and you voted Hillary? Yeah. Now it feels even scarier to do that. It felt super scary at the time, and now it's like, I don't even know. Like, It would be so, and I would have a hard time because we really tried to, when we asked our questions and interviewed people, we tried our best. To like stay as neutral as possible and really just kind of get answers from people and have the documentary be a feeling. This is how things felt, not making someone an enemy or, trying our best to just be like, this is how people felt and this is what it was. But now it's like, I don't know if I could necessarily I'm not necessarily a journalist or anything. So conducting those interviews and not having emotions about asking a Trump supporter why they voted for Trump or whatever would be really, I think, tough for me.
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily want to be going around asking people who they voted for.
I kind of wanted to exist, and I would love to make something again like that because it's been a long time since I've kind of done any documentary work that was so relevant, and I felt like sort of a timestamp in history or something.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm a person for it. I think I'd be too emotional about it.
Oh yeah. Well, see, you've moved mostly from documentary to photography.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find photography more rewarding, or is it just that documentary is such a time commitment? How do you?
Oh, I love documentary. I think what happened was after I graduated, I had gotten some jobs that swayed me more towards photography, and then I had a moment of realization of, oh, I'm a lot better at this than I thought I was. And I think I might even be better at it than film. Because film I loved, but I didn't have, it was a very learned skill for me. Whereas I feel like when I met people like you, there was an innate thing in your brain that was like, this is sort of meant for you. And so I know I love storytelling and I knew all of that. But photography much more clicked with me, especially after I graduated. Because I think when you're in school, I'm just trying to get the paper and get out and learn as much as I can. And I was so engrossed in that world for a bit that I didn't even consider that I might be good at photography. I did it as a hobby for so long.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until someone started paying me for it without knowing that that wasn't something I was really doing that I was like, oh, maybe I'm kind of good at this. So then I transitioned quite a bit because I love it. I love it so much.
I know a number of people who will finish school and maybe even specifically film school where they get out and then that's when they realize that they're better at a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming you don't regret doing film school because it led you to all the connections and experiences and strengths that you have.
It did. The only thing I do wish is I went into school knowing I wanted to do something. I knew I wanted to be in the arts. I knew I wanted to storytell, and I knew that about myself, but I didn't know specifically what it was going to be. So I kind of did film school as well, I know I love movies. Let's see if this works. And then I'm kind of a school person who I'll put my head down and get it done. So I just kind of did that without really looking up to think well, I could change my major if I figured out what it was. But I think timing wise, I wouldn't have known it was photography till afterward anyway. Yeah. And it did give me the basis for so many other things. So, and I still work on film stuff. I just did a commercial. I never seek out film jobs, but if someone reaches out to me, usually from a group of people I love and trust and love working with, then I'll always hop on those projects. So I still have consistently worked on film related things, but I just advertise myself as a photographer.
Yeah, and like you just said, now you have skill sets to make money and meet different people in extra places. I've always said in a weird way, people shouldn't go to college for what they want to do, but rather an ancillary skill that can be paired alongside it. In some ways I think oh, what if I went to business school and then I was just a filmmaker in my own time and then I would have both. I'm glad I went to film school and I met the people I did and this and that. But as an artist, I think it's good to just be multifaceted. So I'm sure doing all the video work just is part of why you're such a good photographer in some indirect way.
That's true. No, it does help because I did, ASU wasn't big on learning technical stuff. We did a lot of story development and writing papers and theory, blah blah blah. But so I had to learn a lot of the technical stuff painstakingly on my own. That was more of the things that didn't come naturally to me, as I was so much more about I know what I want it to look like. I know that this will help this feeling and blah blah blah. But I couldn't. It was much harder for me to learn the camera. So doing that with video first and then going to photo was so easy. Okay. Rather than going photo and trying to learn video, I feel the fact that I had to learn all of film and video first gave me such a good basis to then go into composition, knowing the ins and outs of my camera and my lens and everything afterward.
I've never owned a photography camera because I've always had Blackmagic cameras that literally only shoot video. Yeah. So I've never even had the chance really to play around as a photographer unless I was just taking photos on somebody's set as a favor or something like that. It's I think of myself mostly as a director, and then I love being a cinematographer. And it's ironic because you're using, you know, all the same settings and like rules of like light and capturing an image, whether or not you're doing video or photo. But somehow like those skills are very different things, because I think of myself as not a good photographer.
Yeah,
and it's probably no, like I really don't. And like I think it's most likely because I just have not spent that many times taking photos. But to an outside person, they're like, well, you're still using a camera, how does that make sense? But like I don't think I'm particularly good as a photographer.
It is sort of a whole new set of rules, but it is kind of fun because it's the same idea of like learning all the rules so you know how to break them too. Because I think there's just so many photographers now. Like you can, and I mean this genuinely, you can be a photographer so easily.
Yeah.
You've got a whole YouTube online school. You could just have an iPhone and pull something pretty good off. Mm-hmm. Like you can buy the detachment lenses, whatever it is. So going into that, I was like, there's just so many photographers. I'm not about to think of myself as some genius artist, because it's like there's, you know, if you're in a 5-mile radius, there's 25 other photographers you could hire for your wedding that will do the same thing that I do. So in that sense, it's like you can definitely like learn, but then it's knowing the rules so you know how to break them for yourself, and then feeling like, okay, I got to that level, now I can be an artist about it, you know?
Yeah,
so that's how the process was for me, at least, was getting to that point and then being able to transition and be like, okay, cool, now let me find my sense in it, you know.
When you were in school kind of struggling to learn technical skills, I know you had mentioned that ASU was not the best at getting us hands-on experience with equipment, and I think that's because it's just such a big university that, you know, they have very large class sets, so they realistically can't give us one-on-one time or equipment until you're like a few years in, and then the class sizes dwindle down naturally.
But then it's like right before, at least for me, I did 3 years, so that last year was like where you kind of finally were required to have your hands on a camera, and then at that they just expected you to know all of it. Mm-hmm. I think the only course I had one, or maybe it was our documentary course, did we do like a lighting workshop or something for interviews, which was like I kind of already knew how to do a lot of that, so it was nice. But that was my last semester of school. I was about to have a film degree, and that was the first time we had any sort of lighting workshop. Yeah, at least in my
it's pretty crazy. I always say Scottsdale Community College, like they're really good at.
I've heard really good things, and I didn't even know. I had no idea that SEC had a good film program until I was about to graduate.
They make you shoot a movie on 16 millimeter film, so they have everybody learn how to use film. They have I remember because my roommate went there, so like we had like the comparison, and I remember like he did have to do a bit of screenwriting, but like he was the best at lighting of anyone I knew, like Riker Wells, and you know, at the very least he had like the most experience because he was on sets all the time. So yeah, like ASU was good for getting the other stuff, like I think like pre-production and producing and like meeting large groups of people and having
that's true.
You know, did you find that like in addition to not having the in-class experience that like the people around you were a little bit, what was the trouble with learning? Like, did you feel like you had peers to work with, or was that hard?
No, that wasn't my experience at all. I think maybe I just have an impatient personality, but since I knew I wanted to do it and I was a little frustrated with what my experience had been like, rather than switching schools, I was like, I had a scholarship and I was like, I'm gonna stick with this and get the degree. But I started working in the like kind of Arizona indie world my freshman year of college, and had just like lied to get my first job and just told them I was experienced to get a script supervising job. Mm-hmm. And so I started scripty on sets all the time, but they were kind of in these weird factions, as I know now, but at the time I wasn't aware. There's like these weird factions of Arizona film community, and depending on which pocket you're in, you're gonna have very different experiences. Like it's kind of like these sets where they feel like everyone's playing house, like everyone's playing set, and it's
nobody's actually like doing their job or good at their job,
or they're doing it but they don't actually know how. Like it's kind of, sometimes it's people who redirected their career when they were 45, and so they don't actually know how to do anything, but they have the money and resources and they want to try. And so there's like that pocket of people. And then I started working with people from like SEC my like second year of college, and I was like, whoa, this is totally different. So just depending on what pocket you're in. So actually the project I did with you was one of the first things I did with any ASU student.
Oh, wow.
I didn't work on any ASU sets until it was required by course. So I was fully like out in the indie world, like kind of stumbling around these weird pockets of Arizona film world. And thankfully I was like one of 3 script supervisors in the state. So I got some good like kind of work, and scripting is an interesting job to start at, because you're not like a super, people don't view you as a super important role on set.
Do you want to explain what it is?
Oh yeah. So script supervisor is basically continuity supervisor. You have the script, but you're also in charge of knowing what props belong where. You're in charge of knowing if they use their right hand to drink out of the cup or their left hand to drink out of the cup, if the clock is set to the right time. And you would take photos of all of the hair and makeup and all of the wardrobe to make sure that if you film something one day, in 2 weeks, you're going to film that same scene later. You need to know. And you also, there's just like, you take time codes for how long each take takes. Like, you're kind of in charge of like, you're kind of like this person who fills in the holes. Like, you do all these random jobs and they're all built into one job. So I really liked it because I'm really anal and like OCD about things, and like note taking, and you take notes on every shot so that you can give all of your notes, like extensive color coded notes, to the editor so that they never have to look through anything. They know which shot to use, what time that worked, you know, which one the director liked, but which one the sound guy liked. Kind of all of those.
Yeah, you're like a real life metadata.
Yes. Yeah.
generator.
In real time data. Yeah, totally. It's just like that. So I liked it because you kind of get thrown into learning about a lot of things all at once. I never touched the camera, but I learned about, he's on this lens, so he needs to be 2.5 feet from the person or whatever it is. Like, you learn about all these random things, and you talk to the sound guy the whole day, and you're also talking to the props and wardrobe person, and so you're weirdly in the middle of everything. And I also just liked it because I love being organized, and I'm a Virgo, so it really worked for me.
It sounds like you were really like self-motivated though to be getting all these jobs and doing all these different things. Like, where do you get that from?
I don't know. I think growing up, so I have a twin brother, and growing up we were very like, not compared in the way a lot of twins are compared, thankfully, because we're different genders, but he was always really naturally smart and like could just remember things and was very good. And I didn't have that quality at all, which I blame on, I was like diagnosed with insomnia in the 7th grade. So I have no like short-term memory at all. So I'm very like, I'm crazy about notes. I have notes on my phone. I have an extensive calendar because I won't remember anything. So it's all written down. So I think I got really good at studying. And then that kind of turned into, I was so good at studying because otherwise I wouldn't pass my classes, that I became a really good like student in life, like just every day. So I was just used to that. And also I'm a Virgo, like I said. So I think just notes are my thing.
Yeah. Well, even outside of your skill set, just having a work ethic to do that amount of work, because I know a lot of people, like you were saying, like, you're a very hardworking person, and you were graduating thinking like, oh wow, I haven't even touched lights before this. But some people, they're graduating and maybe they're saying that just because they haven't taken it upon themselves to like work on sets or do work. So like for you, like, why were you so?
I don't know. I think I just had, I don't know, I've just always had that curiosity. I kind of grew up very introverted and timid, but I also kind of knew, I don't know, I just valued hard work for some reason. I guess I can attribute that to my parents probably, but I appreciate you saying that. I still feel like I try my best to live by that. I think I just don't do well when I'm not busy. Like, if I don't have things to do, or if I'm not keeping myself busy, then I get down. I get really just sad, and then it spirals into all these other bad qualities, which I feel like a lot of people are probably that way. But
yeah, the people who are closest to me would probably say like, oh, Zane's always down because he has like too many things to work on. But it's like, if I have nothing to work on, I go crazy. So it's kind of like I have to like fill it.
I think a lot of people are that way too, but they may not recognize it. Like, I've met several people who, like, I have a lot of friends who are gamers, for example, and they kind of get down on themselves because they feel like they haven't accomplished anything, or they're just very depressed and they'll stay up all night and game and eat, and then they don't feel like they accomplished things. And I know that there's layers to that because you're addicted to gaming and stuff, but sometimes I feel like they fill their time with this thing because they don't know what else they should be doing. And I'm like, if you just tried something new and then tried to fill your day with these other things, you might be a personality who needs to be busy, and the reason you've been feeling so depressed is because you haven't been keeping yourself busy. Like, sometimes you just have to create fake projects for yourself and pretend like they mean something. Like,
yeah, I think people need to feel like they've exerted themselves on a daily basis, maybe to like get rid of a little bit of anxiety, especially like considering like how we've, just evolved as a species,
Yeah, because everything's made up.
Yeah, everything's
made up. Like, we're living in a made up world. So kind of like, create your own life for yourself. And if you're feeling, I know this is so much easier said than done. Some people are clinically depressed, and I don't mean to devalue that at all. But for me at least, it does, since I know that about myself now, that if I don't stack up these projects, whether they're real or made up to me, I will get very, very depressed. So
yeah, I think like, everybody has a ranging scale of how default depressing their life is, or how hard their circumstances, so it's like life is always unfair, and there's always somebody who has it better or worse than you, but It's like no matter who you are, it comes back to the question of like, okay, well, this is your life that you're living through your two eyes, so like what are you gonna do about it, and it's like if you have a limit, like, oh, I can't exercise because of a physical thing that literally keeps me from doing it, okay, well, maybe not that, but what else? And then for the person who doesn't have that ailment, like maybe just go like exercise, and like try to feel better. So like there's always something. And I think what you're highlighting is like, especially with art, it's something you can like be really proud of, teach yourself new skills, and just kind of get better and better and better.
Because I think because it's all made up. Like I think I've recently in 2020 just been living in that mindset of like nothing matters, it's all made up anyway, so just do, people. I feel like I've always had people in my life, we'll see each other, we haven't seen each other in months or something, they'd be like, oh, you've been so busy, like just because I've been posting whatever I've been working on social media, and in my mind I'm like, all of it's made up, but thank you, like I appreciate it so much that you think I'm so busy and I'm so accomplished, but I'm just, even if you're not an artist, I feel like if you're a person in business, or you work in engineering or whatever, like there's always some sort of project you can be creating, or something you want to learn, or even if you're just working out for you, right, and you want to gain on your reps or whatever, like I think it's just important for people to be their own like parent or teacher.
I think that's very important. That's the existential thing of becoming an adult, because no matter how good or bad your parents were, once you're an adult, or for some people earlier, you become your own parent, and then it's just like, okay, I'm
still a baby.
Like you gotta give yourself a bedtime and not eat candy all the time like I've been doing.
I'm still a baby, so it's like you just have to parent yourself a little bit, and then
what, your brain's not done growing till you're 27?
I'm not done growing yet. I'm just a baby.
Yeah, if you're under 27, your brain not done yet.
Yeah, but I just feel like I have so many adults in my life who constantly talk about how getting old is weird because they still feel like they're in their 20s, but their body is in their 40s or something. And I'm like, I think that's because everybody eternally feels
these people are worn down.
Young.
You said they feel in their 40s?
No. They feel like they're in their 20s, but they are in their 40s. Oh,
they are literally. Okay.
Yeah, they are literally in their 40s, but they suddenly, like, it hits them like they're a full-grown adult. I'm like, I think it might be that way forever. And, like, anyone who, I don't know. I was going to say anyone who is 60 and relates to being 60 is crazy, but that's probably unfair. I'm sure there are people who are 60 who feel 60, but
yeah, there was I remember there was this movie where there was this older character, and he was saying like ever since he was 19, when he looks in the mirror, he sees a 19-year-old, and he's like, I just feel the fucking same. He's like, once I formed an identity, like that was it. He's like, I'm the same guy. It's like really existential.
Like I know I'm gonna learn more things, become wiser, but I still don't think I'm gonna feel. I think I'm still gonna. You just feel like yourself.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes you just feel like you relate to a certain age because that's when you felt the most you, or when you first realized you or something,
Yeah, I've been gaming a lot more since the summer because like I can be really bad at just giving myself free time and things that I enjoy. So like I really like Super Smash Bros, and I've been kind of like going crazy with it since like June or so. And like sometimes you're sitting there playing for a while, and you're like, I like just every like little win, you feel like a little burst of accomplishment because you're like, I did that, because it is like essentially sports, just less physical activity, but it's like a skill set you're working on. And even that, like I sometimes can make myself think like, okay, I can't sleep in, spend too much time with friends, eat out, like do this because I like get too overly exerted in like work and productivity, and like that's not good for you either. You need to like throw in things that are enjoyable, or else like everything's gonna suck.
Yeah, no, that's true. You gotta have.
I find the more that I relax, the more productive I am when I work, because otherwise I can go into these spells where every single time I'm like doing something for free time, I feel like bad about it.
Yeah.
And then when I'm working, I'm like clawing to procrastinate it because my body has not fulfilled its free time needs, you
right,
know?
yeah. I do have I have this problem, and I had this in college. It was when I first recognized it, is if I have a day where I have like 17 things to get done, I will get all 17 done. Like, I'll be so busy and I'll get all 17 were done. But if I have one thing to do that day, I will never do it. I won't do it. I need to be like I'm not like neurotic in the sense where I have like a full-blown schedule that I've written out for myself, even if like no one's counting on me. It's just like, oh, by 1 p.m. I'm gonna have this done by 2. Like, I don't have that, but I just know, like, if I feel like, okay, there's so many things to get done today, I'm gonna get them all done. If I have one, I'm like, I can whatever, and then it'll be like midnight and be like, well, guess I'm adding it to tomorrow. If I have the one thing, and then I'll just feel terrible. So if I like create things for myself,
I really like creating lists, and they always get ridiculously long.
Yeah.
And the problem I run into is I'll create these lists with all these things on it, and I'll think like, okay, mathematically it's technically possible for me to do every single one of these things if I'm perfect and I never toe the line of like taking too long or slowing down or this or that. And then naturally I never finish any of my lists because I've made it too, like, I have to hit every single note or else I failed, you know?
Yeah.
So then I'm like failing all the time and then feeling bad about it, and then it gets harder and harder. So I've been trying to give myself a little bit less and just like be more realistic with myself. And I think as a result, like when I'm relaxing now, I feel happier, and when I'm productive, I feel like more excited to be productive because they feel like more separate worlds where I'm like just being realistic about them. But so I envy that you can put down 17 things and then do all 17.
I think it's just based on your personality. Like, I'm not judging anyone who lives differently. That's just what happens to work for me. Because some people thrive off of, they've got just those 2 things that they're going to do that day, and it works really well for them. But my brain will just give me all of the time to relax or do whatever I want to do. And then
I think there's some behaviors too where for one person it would like be almost like manic and crazy, and then for another person it's actually really doable. Because for instance, like lately, what I've been doing that for some people probably sounds crazy, when I'm like exercising in the morning and then I'm taking like 90-second rests in between exercises, I get up and then like I go find a chore to do for those 90 seconds, and then I come back. And I know that sounds literally insane, but it's helped a lot, because now I've been like kind of being like, okay, I'm just gonna really quick start the laundry and then run back and then go back to like doing
and you
sit-ups.
feel even more productive, I'm sure.
Well, it's just been giving me time back, because like things like laundry and the dishes can give me a lot of anxiety, and I just push them off and push them off and push them off. But like now I've just been like combining them with other time commitments that I already have. So
it's kind of a great way to sort of, you know, that I forget what it's called, but those practices where you do things with your left hand instead of your right hand or things like that. Like, I'm sure it's good for like right brain, left brain, for you to be doing things like that too.
I know Elon Musk, like a lot of people ask him about like his time commitment and like or management and how he does things, and he says he just task shifts a lot. Like, he switches what he's doing every 20 minutes.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Not about him, but just that practice in general, like kind of shifting what you're doing. Like, instead of cleaning your whole house for an hour and a half, just doing it between your other jobs or whatever.
So you're saying how like people can look at what you've been up to on the internet and like have the perception that you're super busy all the time.
Yeah. And I think there's actually something, and I was just thinking this, I didn't say it, but I think there's something unhealthy in it too that I need to work on. Is for most of my life, I think I've valued a lot of my self-worth on how busy I am. That has not been a super healthy practice, because it doesn't, like I said, everything's made up, nothing matters. We're just humans who made up our own little like play rules, you know? So I think me like perceiving myself as like my own self-worth is how busy I am to other people is so unhealthy sometimes. But I've been trying to slowly work, especially because 2020 slowed down so aggressively. Like, I've been trying to like recognize, oh, that probably wasn't a super healthy thing to be doing, and you know.
Well, you're someone who can go like weeks or months like posting every day. How does that make you feel?
So because your last guest, I'm so sorry, I can't remember her name. Sadia. Okay, so super cool, by the way. But I think she's talking about how like for her, social media for her is completely different than how I had viewed it for so long, because I know a lot of people who it's like it just is not their thing, or there's only one that they use. But I think the switch for me was I had like an Instagram, got it like my senior year of high school, and had it for like a couple of years into college, and it was like a personal account, and you're trying to post these pictures of yourself. And I had a really hard time with that because that was just bad for my mental health. And then once I started doing photography and kind of converted it into sort of a business account or just art account or something, that was, I mean, just night and day. Like, I didn't have the same issues I used to have about the amount of time I would spend on there or how bad I would feel about myself afterward, or especially for girls. I've talked to ladies about this a ton, where you just sort of start to just dig yourself deeper and degrade yourself more and more. And I haven't had that in so long, just because I mean, rather than being judged for how I look or my body or anything, I was being judged for my art, which for some reason was better for me. Like, I could take that criticism a little bit more. If that photo didn't get the traction I thought it was going to, then I'll look at it and be like, what, you know, maybe I'm doing something different here. Not that it really matters, because it matters how I feel about it, not necessarily how other people feel about it. But I do use Instagram stories. That's kind of my biggest, I use like my Instagram feed and my Instagram stories, and I use that to show personal life or just day-to-day stuff. And
yeah, Instagram's kind of like LinkedIn now for artists and small businesses, in a sense. Like, it's a networking tool, and a lot of the time it's like a replacement for a website, because more people will be there and you can sort of have a portfolio. Do you think there's like a negative connotation to because like once there's market shifts, people kind of start to follow each other's pattern of behavior. So if you see a lot of your like quote unquote competitors like posting every day, you feel like you have to post every day.
Right.
Like how do you feel about that?
I think I've gotten into a groove now for a little while, especially now that I've actually been like running my own business for about a year. Actually, I've been fully like freelanced, etc. I think I used to be influenced by that, and now I've kind of gotten into my own groove where it doesn't affect me too much, because I used to have a problem where I would post, like I had enough work for it, but I would post almost every day because that would get me more traction. But then it became like, how do I actually feel about those photos that I'm posting? How do I feel about them? Like, am I posting them because they seem like Instagram content, or am I posting them because they feel like my content? Or, you know, so I kind of had that, and I think I've just kind of gone through that, and now I feel really good about my feed and what I post, and just posting it for me because I like it. And so that has shifted.
Does it at all like make you feel like your artwork is almost like ammo, like that, and you're like running on empty sometimes?
Right.
Because I know for a lot of photographers, if they do a shoot, they now have like 100+ images from like one day's work, you know, just because they're trying a lot of different things. So in theory, like if you've gone through the week of, you know, your 7 new shoots that you've done, and now it's the next week, you're on day 8, you have extra photos from a shoot that you've already posted about previously. Right. Like, do you ever feel like it's kind of mentally caused you to think about art in a different context, to where now you're thinking like, oh, I don't have enough in my back pocket?
Right. I mean, I think there was a period of time, especially when I first started, where I had that, where I was like, I have a deficit of content to be posting. But now it's like I have enough content, and I also haven't been too worried about like if I don't post that day. Like, I want to feel better about what it is that I post rather than just posting for the sake of posting. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it definitely did feel like that for a while. Like, you know, this is my arsenal of equipment to be, or whatever, to be posting. And so, but no, I do post out of order all the time though. That's something that I kind of forgot that isn't that normal. Like, I was looking at some other people's pages, which is another reason I love Instagram, because I just use it in the sense of like, people I follow are purely for, I love what they're doing, or it's inspiration. I think that's been a big thing too, is like making sure you're following people who resonate with you, or something different than you experienced or something, rather than just doing it as a comparative thing. But anyway, but a lot of people post, like, they'll do a shoot and they'll do a nice grid and they'll post like their favorite moments from it. And I just haphazardly will like look through one of my old galleries, be like, I loved this one, I'm gonna post it. And like, I forget, like someone recently was like, you're in town? Like, I thought you were back in LA, you just posted it. I was like, oh no, that was just a shoot I did in LA. Like, I wasn't in LA at the time that I posted it, but I forget that people
perceive your reality based on what you're putting out there in real time. So
in my mind, I'm just building a gallery, like, and I forget that they're connecting it to, well, she must be there or have just done that shoot just now.
People have a out of order account of your life events.
Exactly, which kind of is nice, because I do like,
puts more mystery on where you are and what you're doing.
It puts more mystery, because you can know where someone is at all times, all the time. And it kind of scares me a little bit, especially with stories. So that's the other thing I do too, is it did become a problem for a while. I didn't like how attached I was to my phone, or I really like creating Instagram stories for like literally the storytelling of my day. It's kind of a fun thing that I like to do. But it was becoming like, I don't want to be opening this all day. It's such a time sucker. And like, I do want to look at and see what all these other people have been posting and kind of use some inspiration or just like congratulate them on how cool that was or whatever. But I was opening it way too many times. So I started to, I'd say about like 6 months ago, I took photos and videos on my phone all day and then never attached to any social media, just take them on my camera roll. And then at the end of my day, I'll spend 20 minutes putting them all up as a story. And like, that's actually the story of my day rather than doing it throughout. And that's been super helpful.
I take way more videos on my phone now because it's just one of those things where I was just like, I have a camera in my pocket, you know,
right.
And a lot of the time, like I don't post most of it, but I just kind of like having it. Like it's just, because cameras are just funny invention, especially video cameras, where I think when they first came out as a consumer thing, most people didn't really know what to do with them. And that's why like the early age of YouTube and like what was viral back then was so interesting. Like it really could just be like a baby being cute and everybody's like, oh, baby.
Exactly, yeah.
So I've kind of tried to go back to that a little bit and just kind of enjoy just having a camera on me. As far as like how I post, like, because I do video work, every project I do besides podcasts inherently take multiple weeks or months. There are some teams where like maybe they're a little bit of a bigger team and they can just crank something out really, really fast. I do everything almost entirely by myself, and then I'll just get like 1 to 2 people to help me because I'm just very independent and I can't really hire all of my friends I would like to hire as frequently. So I've just kind of accepted like I'm going to put out something really good with a lot of work behind it, and then you might not see anything from me again for a very long time. And sometimes like in a competitive aspect that can be a little bit difficult to grapple with because it's easy to like look at the benchmarks of what other people are hitting in terms of success and think like I should be here at this time, or I should be here at this time because I've been doing this for this long. But it sounds like you have a kind of a healthy relationship with just reconciling that you're your own person and you're just gonna do what you're gonna do.
Something clicked for me once. It wasn't about what I looked like, and I kind of separated myself from that. I don't know why. That was such a big thing at the age I was at 18, 19 on social media. Instagram wasn't that new, but it was new to me. And I think once I was able to transition and kind of separate that, and also change my followers and the people I was following, and like kind of make it about something different, I have had so many less issues. And that was years ago. And so whenever people talk about it now and they just hate being on there and they feel terrible afterward, I'm like, I haven't related to that in so long. Like I just thankfully was able to create something really positive for my life, or for, you know, my work or whatever, really early on.
Something I'm a really big fan of is Patreon, which I would say OnlyFans must have been inspired by, because like what Patreon is somebody can have a YouTube channel and then they have a Patreon, and then people can just choose to give them money, like a private subscription service. And then depending on how much you give, YouTube creators can choose, like, people who give me $5 a month get to see my notes, and the people give me $10, I'll make exclusive videos just for them. And I feel like it kind of takes away the people who are well funded. It kind of takes away the feeling of being under a time constraint or I have to make what people like constraint, because if you're this person and you're getting like $1,100 from 300 different people total each month, and you're making this video that isn't even ever going to be posted publicly, it's nice because you know you're getting the money, and you know that the people who are going to see it are only people who are going to care about it.
Right, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so one of my biggest goals for Tall Skeleton is to like get Patreon funding, because if I was able to make like $1,000, $2,000 a month just off of people who are giving me $1 a month and like what I'm doing, it takes away so much pressure, because you know that the time you're putting into something, it's like you have people who are going to want to see it, and it doesn't really matter like when it happens, and you know that you're going to be able to pay your bills. I think a lot of the social media anxiety kind of comes from like the rat race feeling of people feeling like they have to be a certain level successful.
No, totally. And I think like mine's kind of a weird mix. Like I love following people like June that you interviewed in January and you know, Elijah Butler and people who like create very specific, like that is artwork. Like if you hire them for something, it's because you want that piece of artwork. Whereas my stuff is kind of a mix. Like some of that feels that way to me. Like I really know that there was intention and storytelling behind that. But then I also have my family sessions and my couple sessions that are intermingled with my gallery. So it's like rather than needing to have something like a Patreon, which I would love to do that, I think maybe eventually that could be worthwhile. But right now it's like I have such a client base attached to my Instagram. I don't have a huge following. I think I have like 2,500 followers or something, and it's like that's okay, but comparatively to other like wedding photographers who have like 18,000 or whatever, to me it's like that. I mean, and it's built up over years and years, and I post every day. Whereas
I always joke that my current professional Instagram is the same one I made as a personal account when I was like 16.
Mm-hmm.
So the account I had as a high schooler is the account I still use as a professional video person. And I think I'm at like 900 or so, you know, and that's like over years and years. So like it really depends, like you just said, like over like, do you post every day? Do you share who you are as a person?
Right. There's like a whole attachment to it that it just it depends on what your personality is and what way you do business, and like
you said, everything's made up.
It doesn't really make. Yeah, I just have felt so free in 2020. Well, I felt terrible in 2020, but I've also felt free in the sense like nothing matters. Like I keep telling myself that anytime I'm down, like nothing matters. It's all made up, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of cinematographers I really look up to where maybe they're at the point of their career where they're not shooting Hollywood movies, but they're shooting really, really good music videos, short films, and commercials. Like they're in that level of like maybe me in a few years kind of level of their career. They have amazing work. It's like very obvious they're getting hired all the time, and their Instagram is the most dull portfolio with like 7 posts on it and nobody follows them. And it just shows like it's not the only way people are going to find you or see you and this and that. So like any metric of any kind isn't really necessarily the best indicator of like how you're doing. And it goes the other way too. People can have really inflated numbers, but they're not doing shit.
I would say the most important thing is to put the most time into yourself as a person and as an artist, not the most time into your Instagram as a person and as an artist, because ultimately you show up for set that day and then they're like, oh, we didn't really jive with that person. You could be super talented, but if you didn't really jive and you weren't a good team player and you didn't problem solve or whatever it is, they're less likely to hire you no matter how many Instagram followers you have. So it's definitely, that's the most important. But yeah, for me, it's been helpful. Like that's what a lot of my client base is attached to Instagram, whereas like a Patreon makes so much sense for your platform. I was talking to my friend Dean. I don't know if you know Dean Manizuko.
Yeah, I love him.
I love him. You do? Yeah, he and I talked about you.
I shot a capstone project when my camera was like brand new, and I believe he had one of his own, and he was my assistant camera person. So I would tell him how to set up the B cam to my liking, and then like we would cross compare, and sometimes I would have him operate certain shots, and then really, really nice guy. I always couldn't even tell if he liked me or not because he's so dry.
He's so monotone.
I love his personality. Like it's so, like he's really sweet, but he's like the most dry, monotone dude, but like in a lovely way. And I was always like, I want your respect.
No, he's a great dude. He and I have become like, I met him. What's funny is I never even met him at ASU because, as I said, I never worked on ASU projects, and he was like 2 years behind.
It was after I graduated.
Yeah. So, but we worked on like we met like over a year ago. We met on like a really terrible set, but we like bonded, and so we've kind of worked on just a few things together afterward, and we've, in my opinion, I hope he feels the same way, but we've kind of created a good like tag team of like we balance each other out really well on projects. But yeah, he's very monotone. He's monochrome. He's all one color.
This motherfucker's black and white.
He's very monotone and dry, and so once you get to know him, it's like very enjoyable to be around. But we were talking about the same thing about social media and the way that videographers and filmmakers, it's so different than photographers who build a different type of gallery. Like sharing on that kind of platform, there's always super talented people. All the people that I admire in the Phoenix film world have very similar profiles where it's like very, very minimalist. There's like 7 really, really good posts, but that's about it, you know, and it's just so hard to share.
Everybody's account is the same archetype.
Yeah.
That's why like everything I'm trying to do now over the last year or so, it's been very much so just exactly what I want to do. And kind of not what people say you're supposed to do. Because as a filmmaker, like, if you told someone, like, hey, I want to be a cinematographer turned, like, professional feature film director, which is basically what I want my path to be.
Right.
Most people have a path laid out in their head where they're like, okay, this guy's going to move here, work on sets, work his way up, yada, yada. If you told that person, like, all right, my plan is to have a podcast and animate these like lyric videos and direct music videos and this and that, like, people would be like, how do those connect at all? But I'm making things I enjoy. I'm meeting tons and tons of really, really talented people, which get me into different doors. I'm gaining different skill sets through doing different things. So like, I like that when people come to see like what I've been up to, it kind of is like just this random box where you don't really know what's going to be in it.
Well, and I think I don't know if it's something about just this day and age or in just a shift in thinking, but like there was someone I dated for a long time who was a very wonderful person, but they very much had a mindset of like, they're trying to get from point A to point B in a straight line, and they were frustrated when anything got in their path. And in my mind, I was like, there's a bajillion ways to get from point A to point B. Like, I'm open to all of the doors. It doesn't mean it's not going to lead me to point B eventually. Like, I want to be open to those things. But when you're only set on that B line, I didn't mean to make that pun, but I guess that makes sense. When you're set on that, it's like, then you don't open yourself up to these other things or other skill sets you could learn. And then by the time you get there, if you get there, you aren't qualified for all these other things that now, I don't know if it's things have become so saturated that's like you kind of have to be multifaceted. Plus, so many things do kind of go hand in hand.
I think it's because of Kanye.
I don't want to talk about Kanye. No.
I mean, we don't have to extensively, but very legitimately, like, I think like he was like the guy who was like, you put me in this box, I'm gonna break out of it. And you put me in this box, you put me, and like somebody who is like, he's like their greatest inspiration is like Donald Glover, and for like a lot of people, he's like the thesis of I can be a million different things. And same with Tyler the Creator. Like, he looked up to Kanye,
Sure.
and now he's like a clothing designer, musician, composer, music festival creator. And I think like, you know, James Franco was always one of those guys, but I think just having like influential people who say like, I'm gonna do a whole bunch of stuff is like really powerful. I was talking to Jay the other day about like Seth Rogen and how like a lot of people don't know he like executive produces like The Boys on Amazon Prime, and it's like, what does he have to do with that? But I think just having multifaceted people is really important.
Yeah. Okay, we can attribute that to Kanye as well. Like,
I'm not saying he should be president. No. He should not. But like for the most part, like I think like having
it did used to be like you had to really define yourself. It was like in order to get jobs in certain atmospheres for, I think like our parents' generation, it was like you specify and you are very good at that thing and that's how you get hired. And now it's just become like we aren't people who, we're very privileged in this generation of people where it's like we don't have to be really good plumbers to get, you know what I mean? Like those jobs, we were the kind of generation of like you could do whatever you wanted to do because we've gotten to that point in life where so many things are automated or run by robot or whatever, that we have the ability to like be artists and not be starving. Like it used to be, you know, it's no longer exactly like that anymore. So it is a privilege that we get to do this, but it also becomes, well, I'm not going to be this really specific artist because there's a lot of those. So I'm going to be all these things. And like, I don't want to half-ass anything, but there does become a way to kind of, you can be multifaceted and be really good at these other things.
Ironically, though, I will say the people who wind up making me feel the most insecure are the people who are extremely focused on one thing. Like for instance, like Dean, like he's such a good camera person. If he has all these other skill sets, which I'm sure he probably does. I don't know, just because my experience with him is as a camera person. But people like him and Brandon Ripp, who like all they do is like eat, breathe, and sleep like camera stuff, they like wind up making me feel like I need to know more about, you know. That's the one thing, like being, you know, it's the whole like jack all trades versus master none thing. I think if you're really passionate about all the trades you do, they wind up aiding each other, and that becomes a thing of its own. So,
and it does become like, it's good to have deans and people who really, really good at that, because I know what I need to know about cameras, but if I get onto a set and I'm directing and I'm going to be in charge of all these other things, my brain just went into 14 different tangents of things I could talk about, because this is kind of a trope on set of like, when you meet someone, they'll ask you like, oh, what do you shoot on or something. And whenever that's someone's first question to me, I get very like, I write them off immediately. I'm like, you're clearly not worried about storytelling. If your first question is to vet me and see what I know about cameras.
It depends on their tone of voice. Like sometimes it seems like somebody's just trying to make conversation, but other people, they make it seem like they're kind of almost running a purity test on you.
Totally. And I read into it. Maybe I'm not reading into it too much and I'm just qualifying myself, but I do read into it as like a female male thing. I get sized up all the time on projects for being a girl, I think.
I wanted to ask you about that. Like how, like just even besides the projects you're on, going to film school, like did you feel a difference being a woman?
Oh, no, definitely. I think it is a boys' game. It's a man's world in that sense. But I mean, there are a lot of really talented gals. But you do kind of have to like, you either have to sometimes give in to like being one of the guys, or be a little bit more strong about how you feel and run the risk of people viewing you a certain way. And so I kind of have just tried to do my best to size every project up individually and, you know, and figure it out as I go. And I, as an adult, have had to stop apologizing for things, because that's been a whole thing that I didn't realize I was doing in emails and in person. And like, instead of just asking for exactly what I want, I don't have to say, I'm sorry, it's going to be kind of tight here or whatever. I can just say it, because I don't know why I always feel like I have to apologize but anyway, so there's things like that.
It should be undeniable when somebody's good at their job too. You know, like no matter who they are, if you see them performing their job and they're good at it, it's like, how can you pretend that that's not happening unless you suck?
I think I used to, especially in college, I really cared about how people felt about me, because I didn't know how I felt about myself. So it was always very like, I wanted people to view me a certain way on set. I used to help direct a comedy show on campus, like a live comedy thing that we would record. And I got way too into it. Like for me, and looking back, I'm like, I was way too invested. I cared so much about what the output looked like, because that's how I am in projects sometimes. It's just, I want it to be, if I'm going to be involved, it's going to be the best it can be, because that reflects on me. Mm-hmm. But then what I didn't realize is like, it's a comedy show. It's a college comedy show where people are just looking to have fun. And I was like super intense about it for no reason.
That's why I know who you are. I was at like an AFA meeting and you were there like explaining how the comedy night needed like a new editor or something like that. And
I forgot about that. That is how we met, isn't it?
Probably.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, but I was just really...
I think I fake inquired.
Really?
I was always like obsessed with just trying to meet everybody and build relationships and stuff. So I think like if I spoke to you, I probably knew I wasn't available. Right. I was just like, what's this all about? Yeah.
Yeah. But that was kind of like my first taste of like, people are going to like, I was really intense about it, but I also really cared about how people felt about me. And so when I would hear feedback or feel a certain way of like how people took things the way I said it, I would get really, really insecure. And now I'm kind of at the point where I don't care as much. Like I care about people's feelings. I want everyone to have a good time on set, but I'm not as intense as I used to be. Like I'm definitely like, we're all here to, you know, work for the same goal. And if someone's gonna have a feeling about me, they think I was a bitch on set because I was just being a director, whatever. Yeah. It doesn't bother me as much as it used to. It definitely used to be a big thing for me. But
I've worked with men and women, directors, camera people, gaffers, and it's like all I give a shit about is that like they're a cool person, they're good at their job, really.
Yeah, no, you certainly were one of, I have like 3 friends from college and you're one of them. Like I really only retained a few people, and that's not necessarily anybody's fault. It just is what happened. But I have, so many stories of, that's why I say, like, if someone's first question to me is, what do you shoot on? Or they ask something technical and you can tell by the tone, I just write them off in my head immediately. You. Yeah, because it happens with men all the time where it's like, or if I'm doing, I don't know, BTS on a set or whatever it is, like, and their first question to me is, what do you shoot on? I'm like, you think I'm underqualified. And that's what I'm assuming because it's happened so many times that maybe it's rude for me to assume that's what a man is insinuating. But I'm just jaded now. And so if their first question to me is not like, oh, how'd you get to be part of this project? Or like, what kind of story are you trying to tell? Or how long have you been involved? Or whatever it is. But if they want to talk to me, if they want to talk shop, I can talk shop. That's fine. Yeah. But it makes me feel like...
I think dudes do that to each other well. But like with a woman, they're probably... They might not even be aware of it, but they probably just have a more natural inclination to be like,
right.
And like, that's not cool.
Right.
Like, I know this one woman I'm friends with, and she was doing like you just said, like set photography, and the camera team, I think, like was giving them a hard time about the camera that they were
or the
taking
way she was
photos
shooting.
on. Yeah. And it's just like, come on, guys, like it's not even your job.
Yeah.
Like leave them alone.
Totally. Well, and I'm also of the opinion of if you're a good artist and good storyteller, it doesn't matter what you're shooting on. It shouldn't matter what you're shooting on.
Well, it'd be crazy if I like went over to the sound guy.
Yeah.
And I was like,
trust that they know how to do
what microphone are you using? It's like, yeah, the set photographer is using a camera, but also it's like there are people who have like a really like basic camera that do better work than people with the most expensive one.
Totally,
you know? So it's like you're saying, it's just there's a lot of insinuations.
Yeah, with certain projects, it's also just like it's the content rather than the quality of the or it's the quality of the content of like what's in the content, not like what the pixels are. You know, like sometimes it's just different. But yeah, I think with guys, and I was even talking to a friend in LA who also, you know, works on sets all the time, and I was talking about that specific thing about how the talking shop thing. He was like, no, I think sometimes it's guys doing it to each other too because they genuinely are talking about it, and sometimes it is other men sizing other men up too. It's kind of like a how, you know, who's bigger, and it's kind of that thing too.
Yeah.
But I definitely, and I've had some really good experiences with men on set, which are the people that I continue to work with, and then I've had some really bad ones. But I even have like, all these things are coming to my brain, but I recently worked on a commercial with Dean, who is such a great partner to work with, but he had told me, he was like, I really want to make sure that we got to kind of handpick our set a little bit. So we just really wanted to make sure it was a diverse set. And then, you know, he was like, I want to make sure it's like kind of a female heavy set, which it was probably close-ish to 50-50. But part of me was like, oh, I really appreciate that he wants to make this a really like female heavy set because we co-directed it. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to, I think it was like the prop master on set. And she was like, there's so many ladies here. Because normally when I'm on set, there's like one other gal, you know.
Yeah, it's usually weighted.
It's very weighted. And so she's like, so many ladies here. And I was like, yeah. Dean really wanted to make sure it was a female heavy set. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to like go thank him. And then I stopped and I was like, no,
don't.
Absolutely do not go thank Dean for including us. You know, like
make this normal by not even bringing it up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I even had that moment where I was like, I don't remember if I said something to Dean like, oh, I appreciate that. Like, I can't remember exactly if I did or not, but if I did, I'm kicking myself because while I do appreciate Dean for the person he is, and making sure that there was a diverse set, he doesn't need my thanks.
Well, it just shows like if it was a racial thing, like it would definitely be unspoken. Nobody would be like, wow, this is like a really
I'm not about to continue thanking men for just including me while I'm perfectly qualified to be there. You know?
Yeah. Because like I'm so indie, like usually I hated that sentence. You know what? Like in terms of production, ugh.
Oh, that's gonna be so indie.
God damn it. Well, but like literally, like in terms of being like independent and like making like productions, like I usually have like extremely small teams, even back in school. So like I've always just been, who do I know and who's best for the job, you know? Mm-hmm. So like Josh, he's like the best camera guy I know, and Q, he's the best lighting guy I know. So like a lot of time I do run into situations where I have like just like a lot of dudes, you know, but like June Hucko, like she's amazing. I love working with her. She's a great camera person. She's a great production designer. And so it's like, I'll have situations where I have like Josh and Q and maybe Dean like filling a lot of spots, and that's where like from far away you could say like where's all the women. And like I do think like it at the end of the day it does come down to like who's best for the job, but it's like there's no shortage of really talented women, and different people bring different things to the table. So it's like that's where it's kind of on you to look at different people's work and think like, okay, I use Josh and Q for this project, maybe I should use so and so for this project.
You know, you need to widen your circle a bit. Like I think, and I like, once again, I hate saying I appreciate that Dean did that, but I mean it in the sense of like, he did hire some of the people he knew would be good for the job, but he did also reach out to people. Instead of doing his go-to person who gets plenty of work because they're a white man and they get plenty of work on sets, he went and reached out to somebody else that he hadn't worked with before to, you know, and made sure they had a good resume or whatever, and communicated with them first. But like taking that extra bit of effort to make sure you're widening your circle to give everybody an equal chance to things, and you might find your next go-to person that's not a white male.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. So, like you and I should do something together.
Yeah, definitely.
That'd be really good.
We've done something in the past. And it turned out okay.
That's true. It's been like, it's crazy that was like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Don't make no sense to me.
A long time ago. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I haven't. Something I've been like grappling with is I haven't made a short film in the amount of time that I was going to school making short films.
Yeah.
And that's like really fucked up to me. So I've been wanting to like have a script to work on.
Yeah.
But anyways, you so you created is it called Quad Shot Meetup?
Yeah, Quad Shot Meetup.
It's kind of a tongue twister. I didn't
I
want to
know.
mess it up.
Yeah, Quad Shot for it began as 4 photographers, 1 model, and so it was Quad Shot in that sense. But also we usually would meet for coffee first, so Quad Shot as in Quad Shot. So it was a pun, yeah, it was because, and this is not an original idea. I had seen it. I had been following a lot of photographers on YouTube and things like that. And there were other meetups across the US or across the globe that I had seen, but I hadn't ever found that kind of community in Arizona. Like there's a lot of networking events and things like that, but they were always like stiff and weird, and I couldn't figure out how to sort of get involved. So I just created my own, and it started out, it was like really simple, just like 4 photographers, 1 model, and we just get together and collaborate for free and meet and hang, and then you kind of build your portfolio and your contacts at the same time. So it existed for about a year before I ever put it on Instagram. Like it was on Instagram, but I didn't have its own page, and so then I created an Instagram in December of last year. And it's got, like 300 followers or something, but all 300 of them have reached out about wanting to be involved. So it's kind of like I got hit really quick by a wall of people. So it grew really massively into like full team of like, we'd have like 8 photographers, 2 models, a makeup artist, a hairstylist, a wardrobe stylist, like a full team of people all working for free, everyone beneficially gaining portfolio experience and all of that all at once. So
it seems like just a really mutually beneficial thing. So
yeah.
To explain, like you're organizing shoots where multiple of each typical job is showing up. So then you have 4 photographers all taking their own photo in a small window of time.
Yeah, it's like that. And it would probably be, 2 or 3 hours of your day, and you'd get to meet a bunch of people, and then now these makeup artists are getting jobs because they met with these photographers, things like that. But it was cool. Like, I really love seeing all the different ways that like a wardrobe stylist and makeup artist can get together and create their own, like I create like an inspo board, but I tell them they have creative freedom and they kind of create something, and then the models wear it. And so in your mind, I'm like, okay, that's already a story right there. But then seeing how every photographer comes up with something completely different, and we usually enact some sort of challenge. Like it's usually like, you're 2 minutes on the clock. This is your 2 minutes to shoot with these models at this location, or you get 10 shots total. That's one of my favorites, is like act like you're shooting on film. Like you have 10, you can only pull your shutter 10 times. And so you have to be really intentional about the way you position them or whatever. So we'll do challenges for the photographers, but comparing all the images is really...
Do you feel awkward having extra eyes on you when you're shooting? Especially, it's like not even a bystander, but it's like another photographer. Because like film directors don't have other directors on set per se, unless they're a multifaceted person.
Yeah, I think for me, I've been at every single one of the meetups that I've coordinated because it's once a month. So I'm sure for some people feels that way, but I really try hard, because one of the reasons I started it was I could never find an environment that felt so like I don't want to feel dumb asking questions, or I didn't know how to do this thing or that thing, and there just didn't feel like the right environment to ask it. And when you're at a networking event, you're not actively working, so those questions don't come up, and vice versa. Like second shooting for someone, you want to do a good job, so you don't ask them the questions you want to ask. So I wanted this to feel like, feel free to screw up, because these photos don't mean anything. These aren't for a client. You're not getting paid. There's no pressure. Like, screw up, ask questions, like see what that person does and steal that idea. Like, that's all it is. You know, that's all everything is your inspiration from other people is like, oh, I never tried that before, I'm going to try it now, you know?
Yeah, I guess I didn't really, it's almost like you're doing an on location classroom workshop, because if we were in class and they were trying to teach us lighting, like we would break into teams and all like do our thing. But it sounds like you're doing an even better job of that, because you guys are going out and like doing like an actual shoot instead of just being like in some classroom.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've actually had, because there's a lot of people who are like pretty dedicated and had been to a lot of them before it was like opened up more publicly, who have pushed me for a long time to make this like an entry thing where people have to pay like $10 to show up, and then we can rent a studio space or something and make it more of a workshop thing, because it ends up being a workshop thing. Like, I'm hosting this event where sometimes I'm having photographers there who are like way more talented than I am, but they're just chill to be there. Like, it's just a fun thing with people of all levels, but it does turn into this thing where, I've had some people kind of suggest like, why don't you make this more lucrative, more like a workshop, more whatever. And I think for me, what it is right now is exactly where it needs to go. I have a too much gene. Like I go way too far and get too intense about projects. So I kind of felt with this one, like, I don't need to make this more than it is. It's perfect, a consistent monthly thing where new people get to show up and experience it, and that's all it needs to be, you know?
Maybe you could do like an occasional, like, hey, these are going to continue to be a free thing that I'm doing, but this time around we want to do a pay-in, so anybody who wants to pay in so that we can use this studio, like, we can do it. Maybe give people the occasional option, just so then all the people who are with you, like, they're there because they want to be like shooting at a studio. But then like keep it like regularly free.
We do have, so I got lucky and found a few studios that I managed to communicate with, and like they donated studio time to us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I've hosted a few studios. We didn't do any this year because, well, we took 3 or 4 months off, and then when we did come back to it and do small group meetups, I didn't want to do anything indoors, just for COVID safety.
Yeah.
So, but thankfully there are a few studios that have been down to, like, because if I frame it as like this is kind of a workshop experience for people, they've been really open to the community in that way. But we have 2020, actually, I had some people that have kind of come, like a core group of Quad Shot, that we were coming up with ideas like that, and we had talked about doing like a few, like, you know, maybe 4 or 5 a year that were like more workshop things that people do pay into, and we do like fully extensive, like this guy Bear, who I actually dated him for a little bit. He's super cool. But he has a studio space here in Arizona, and so we've actually, or in Tempe, we've done a few of the meetups there, and he's really good at lighting. That's his jam. So I was like, okay, we could kind of set up stations of like, we could do a lighting workshop with him, like people who are willing to just give away free knowledge and like set these up for people. So 2020 was going to have some of that.
Was this studio called Wolf and Bear?
Wolf and Bear, yeah.
Studio? I think I came across that.
Yeah. They're really chill. It's a very like relaxed environment, but they do, you know, rent out their space every now and then for very affordable prices. So.
What's whether or not you're being a photographer or like a film producer, like what's your main strategy when it comes to reaching out to businesses or locations? Because a lot of the time, especially like as an indie film student, like you're trying to ask a lot of people for favors and they're getting almost nothing back in return. Like, hey, can I use your restaurant to film in this booth for 20 minutes? And they're like, a lot of people are getting nothing out of it. But what you learn is like sometimes when you do ask for help, people will just let you do something and you're kind of like, I don't even know why they're letting me do this.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's kind of a balance. Like I've had some luck with that. And then in other spaces I've had to like definitely make sure it was in the budget to, like, you know, get into that space. But I think sometimes you have to ride the line of being as professional as possible and also being as upfront and casual as possible too. Like telling them like, this is the project, giving them all the information you can, and then saying, look, like, we really, really love your space and we'd love to like give you as much of a shout out as possible and put you in our credits and things like that, but we can't, here's what our budget is, we can't really pay you. Like being as transparent as you can while also being professional has been the best, because sometimes when you approach someone as like way too casual, you know, trying to talk to a business owner and be like, yeah, we're doing this thing, because you think that might be a good approach, it makes them less confident in your abilities to like respect their space or just things like that.
Yes, I feel like sometimes I do go that approach just because my assumption is that like small businesses don't want anything official that they're not in charge of happening in their space. So like, sometimes I feel like I almost want to like downplay what I'm doing and be like, this is a class project, even though I don't go to school anymore. And with a restaurant, like, you know, some people, they might want to be in the credits so that people find their business, and others I'm like, I can make sure you're not in the credits. I can block all your signs, because like I assume like in this day and age, people are like really afraid of being identified. But no, there's definitely an argument for
yeah, I guess it would depend, you know, making sure that they sign off on whatever the message of the product is, you know, as long as they're cool with that, then they might want their name attached. But I see what you're saying, like they might not want to have it. Yeah I'm not sure.
Do you have like a main like long-term goal, or are you just enjoying like doing what you're doing?
I'm just floating around because nothing matters.
Well, just being a photographer has always interested me, because it can be a really undefined like freelance thing where you're just going from job to job infinitely. And both my parents are freelance artists. My dad's a bronze sculptor at South Mountain Studios, and my mom is a photographer. So like I've seen firsthand what a life of just going job to job looks like as an artist. And that's what I thought of art as for my whole life until like, you know, like I decided to be a filmmaker, and then you realize some things kind of are like a more reoccurring job type thing and social media happened.
Yeah.
But
that's true. Social media changed the game big time. I specifically for the past few years have wanted to work in slow fashion as a photographer. So I'd love to be like a resident photographer for a brand I love, if it was like Girlfriend Collective or these, sustainable brands. That would be the dream, to just kind of be like an art director somewhere where I knew I got to curate photo shoots. Because I do love like producing things. I love styling things. I love all of the above. So that would be the dream. And I just specifically would love to work in slow fashion because that's always been a passion of mine. It's just sustainability. So, okay. And I think for our generation, it's also like much more at the forefront. So
what's slow fashion?
Slow fashion is sustainable fashion. So it's things that are made from like 100% organic or recycled materials. And they also put a big emphasis on treating all of their workers properly. So everyone who works on or makes their clothing gets paid a proper wage and has healthcare, etc. So there's like a section of slow fashion brands that just all in all are, doing what they can to like help our planet and help our people.
Okay. So in other words, like making their products takes as long as it takes, and it's not like the fast fashion assembly line thing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the total opposite of fast fashion, actually actively trying to work against fast fashion. So
yeah. That's something that didn't really come to my attention until somewhat recently, because I've always been really, really disconnected from the fashion world. Like I was the kid that was wearing like plain color t-shirts, jean shorts, and like some New Balances, because like it never, as a kid, like I had no relationship with fashion, and like it didn't even occur to me that people thought about shoes until high school. Like I didn't think of shoes as clothing. I just thought of it as like a foot guard. yeah. So like being aware of like that as an industry is like kind of a new thing.
Yeah. No, I just love, because I started working at Buffalo Exchange right after I graduated college, and that gave me a whole new, I was kind of floating around and knew I wanted to do photography and kind of liked fashion. And then once I started working there and I was a buyer and I was so aware and learning all these things about clothes and learning about fast fashion, how bad it is for our people and our planet and everything, that I was just like, I just got super passionate about it at the same time that I was getting passionate about photography. So it kind of molded in at the same time.
Okay.
So that was also a partial reason for the move to LA, just because I'm not particularly passionate about LA, but there's a lot going on and a lot of brands there. There's none of the brands I would love to work for are based in Arizona. So just being out there, I feel like helps my chances in general of like who have, all the doors that could open to get to plan, to get to point B. So, but also, a lot of my freelance, I say I'm a full-time photographer, and, I've got my business and all that, but it's actually only like a third of what I do. I blog for other people, and I do social media content for other people. So I'm hired by a few people that I regularly, I write all their blogs and I write all their website content and I organize all of their social media posts. And
are you writing as other people?
Yeah. I'm like a ghostwriter, copywriter. Yeah. So I write, there's a few people specifically that I do it for. And so there's like one gal for over a year now, all of her blogs have been written by me, but under her name.
Interesting. But is it like you saying like, hi, I'm so-and-so, but it's just not actually that person?
Yeah, similar. But she's also a photographer and she does a lot of weddings. She does a lot more of that kind of work than I do.
Yeah.
And so, but I write like business, lifestyle, and wedding and engagement blog, so to be like talking about the couple and how amazing the day of the shoot was and all of that, and I'll just have her give me bullet points of like, what time did you leave, what was the weather like, give me a few facts about them or whatever. And I'll kind of like, I don't want to say bullshit because it's not, but something, just put something together and make it all dreamy.
You're
then
structuring what her experiences
exactly, and
were.
like she's a super qualified person. Like I never, at first it was like a new experience. It was odd that I was ghostwriting this thing, but I think it's just one of those things that becomes so normal when someone's workload becomes too much, to hire someone. And she reads everything and vets everything before they're published and make sure like we'll tweak things to make sure it feels like it's more her voice. So I've just gotten really used to writing in her voice, and then I write in this other person's voice, and they're a lot more kind of informational and straightforward and SEO based, and then I'll write in this person's voice. So I kind of have just learned how to put on these hats, and also didn't realize I was good at writing. I literally had no idea I was good at that. And then suddenly I started doing it, and I love it, and I seem to be, people keep paying me to do it. So, and I would love more of it. So if anybody needs blogs written, it's one of my favorite things to do. Like it just kind of, it's just, weirdly enough, people underutilize blogging like crazy. I had no idea how useful of content that is. but it's how people find, there's just all these sections of some people find you on Instagram and hire you through there. And there's a whole another like 35% of the population that purely hires people based off finding them on Google.
Yeah.
So it's just a wild world. I thought it was dead, but it's very much not.
Yeah, well, you see magazines coming back a lot with like a lot of independent artists like making zines and stuff. I don't know how lucrative it is, but from afar you sure see a lot of those happening now.
Yeah.
So I think like literature and stuff is like independent stuff is in demand right now, especially with like a lot of local journalism not being like super well funded. So if there's independent people, I don't know. It's probably the same reason people like vlogs. Oh,
yeah.
Duh, that's the same.
Vlogs.
A vlog is literally a video blog. So
but I mean, there's also different types of blogs, because you can be writing the lifestyle blogs or you're writing informational, where they like having the personality and voice attached to it, but really you're answering a question. So a lot of these blogs that I'm writing are like, people are trying to find a good venue in Phoenix for their next corporate event. And so I've written a ton of blogs about corporate events and where to host them, but it's attached to these photographers' website, who are then also subliminally convincing you to hire event photographers for your event that you found the venue for under their website, so it's kind of like you find all these ways to answer questions online that lead them to answering another question that they weren't even sure they were asking.
It makes me think of the movie Her, where Joaquin's character is working at a company where he ghostwrites people's like letters to each other, and how like in the future we're so
detached,
far removed. People are literally writing each other like happy anniversary letters like through a service, and
that movie's so good.
It's my favorite movie.
It's so bizarre. It's like the perfect amount of bizarre.
I love what Spike Jonze does.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Spike Jonze weirdly did a bunch of like events at ASU.
Really?
Yeah, he did like a lot of. I know, like he did a lot of like speaking events, like Q&As and stuff. Like, I'm saying a lot, but it was probably like 3. Yeah, there were a few, and there were even a few that I remember getting emailed, because I get so many ASU emails. It's insane. I'm sure you do too.
Stop.
But the year after I graduated, I remember seeing a bunch, and I was like, I don't know why I didn't go, but I remember seeing the emails for like Spike Jonze Q&A.
I must have missed that, because that doesn't sound at all familiar to me.
Maybe I'm saying it's a lot. It's just because those are the ones I remember. Maybe it was like 2.
Yeah.
but I remember them happening, and I was like, dang, that's a big like.
I got to meet Spike Lee through ASU.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I asked him a question. I was really disappointed by his answer.
Oh no! Wait.
Do you remember when Spike Lee gave a talk to ASU?
Yeah, I'm sure I saw that email as well.
me and a handful of other film students were like, for some reason, like picked by one of our teachers to go in a back room before the talk started and like have like 20 minutes with Spike Lee. Cool. It wasn't like we were standing next to each other and dapping each other up. We were just sitting in some chairs, and he was sitting on a stool, like towering over us, and like we just got
as
to be
he
like,
should be.
Hi there, Mr. Lee. And I think everybody in the room was just so goddamn like nervous that a lot of people just were like really quiet and didn't really ask anything, and some of the people who did ask stuff asked like somewhat basic questions. Honestly, it was just always one of those things where you think this is going to be some big opportunity, and it just kind of is what it is,
right?
So I was just sitting there the whole time thinking like, what can I ask this guy that I can't Google because a lot of the time, like, I think like if I met Christopher Nolan right now, I don't really know what to ask him, because most of the information I want to know maybe he's already said in another interview. And I wound up just asking him like, so you're obviously like a really prolific filmmaker that people respect, and you make like really socially conscious work. Like, are you really disappointed by what's being made today, or are there things that particularly hold your interest that you're really a big fan of? First, he said that was the year that movie The Birth of a Nation came out. The new one came out, and he was like, that's going to win Best Picture. It wasn't like nominated for anything. And I saw that movie. It was very intense. And then I remember outside of that, he just said, House of Cards and Orange is the New Black is really good. I watch it with my wife. And I'm like, those are the 2 most mainstream Netflix shows in existence. You don't have anything else to... And like that was like his whole answer. And I was just like... I was really hoping he was going to say some like young director that like we should be aware of, or some like foreign film. I don't know. Just some like film student answer. But no, just like anybody else, Spike Lee was just kind of like, House of Cards, real good.
Yeah.
And I was like, man.
Dang, that was crazy. I mean, it does kind of also... I kind of like the answer at the same time, because it does make it like he's more relatable, in the sense of like sometimes people are so genius that they feel so lofty. Like you can't even reach their level of.
They're a normal person.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, he just watches Orange is the New Black. Sick.
Well,
like
the other person I got to meet was the cinematographer Larry Cher, who shot Joker.
Oh, dang.
But a lot of people don't know. So the director and him, the cinematographer who did Joker, are the same two guys that did all 3 Hangover movies.
Okay.
Yeah, so like he's Todd Phillips' director of photography. So this guy also shot all the Hangovers. He shot Garden State, like a lot of like comedies and indie movies. And
then he did the Joker. Wow.
Yeah, and then they did Joker. Yeah. The director of The Hangover, Todd Phillips, he basically like I think you could kind of tell that he was really Scorsese inspired because they also made that movie War Dogs, which I haven't seen, but a lot of people say is like Scorsese-ish. So he said that like with Joker, he basically wanted to make a modern day Taxi Driver, but realized he wouldn't get funding unless he made it about a superhero character. Okay. So he basically just Trojan horsed his script through Hollywood by making it about Joker. Nice. But that wasn't his original plan.
Okay.
But anyways, I asked the cinematographer I just scrolled through my Instagram really quick. I was like, this is the sort of work I do. I'm graduated. Sometimes I get insecure. I make music videos. I don't really know what I'm doing. And I just said like, you've transitioned from film to digital. You've seen industry changes, technology changes. You're currently working, like you just got Oscar nominated.
Sorry.
No, you're good. And I was just basically like, as like a young person, like, do you think I should be really focused on knowing what all the gear is or the new technology? Should I be reading every article of American Cinematographer? Like, what should I be doing? Because I think a lot of time people just feel like, what am I supposed to be focused on?
Yeah.
And he was like, show me your thing again. And I pulled it up and he just like looked at some of my shots. He was like, just keep doing this. he was like, you're fine. He's like, your work looks good enough. He was like, you don't really have to move to LA yet if you don't want to. And he was like, as far as technology, it changes every week. So you don't even really, he's like, you're good. Like yeah. He basically had nothing for me. He was just like, do what you, so yeah, like the point is like a lot of the times like people who have ascended to certain career heights, I think they also, like on top of, they're like, I don't really know, man. Yeah. He's like, I already did it. I don't know what's going on now. But they're also just normal people.
Well, because there's not a formula. Like there just isn't a one size fits all for any of these things. Like it just matters as long as you move. That's my biggest, to be a nerd. I've got tattooed on me, never rush, never rest. And because I think it's just like, just keep moving. Like don't get too, like continue to try new things and everything, but don't stop moving. Even if you don't know what you're doing, just keep trying things, because I think, oh my gosh, because there's so many tortured artists that we know that are just always get overwhelmed by ideas or the lack of ideas and just stop for a little while. Yeah. And I'm like, even if you don't post it, just continue doing things because you'll just find your way through,
Absolutely.
I'm sure I'm saying that as if, I'm probably going to hit a wall real soon and then eat my words, but Yeah.
Anytime it sounds like I've said something smart, it's because I'm struggling in real life.
I'm faking it, guys. Totally.
Right. Well, this was great. We can probably name the episode after your tattoo.
Never rest. Either that or everything's made up. Yeah.
Everything. Oh, that's a good one too. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. We're about at 2 hours, and you got to drive to California.
I do.
Sorry for eating up so much time.
No, you're good.
All right. Awesome. I'm gonna turn off these cameras.
That
was good.
Yeah. That was honestly just fun to also low-key catch up because you and I haven't seen each other in so long.